right, joining me now is the Shadow Health and Aged Care Minister, Anne Ruston. Anne Ruston, thanks for your time. What's your reaction, first of all, to the government announcement in Perth this morning around $12 billion for the Henderson shipyards?
Well, obviously, we welcome the decision. It's been a long time coming. I know the sector and the industry have been calling for this increased investment in our naval capability for quite some time now. I mean, for the government to suggest that it's sort of an early investment seems somewhat of a joke, given the sector has been calling for it for a very long time. You know, maybe this is just a communication to the US before the Prime Minister goes to the US, hoping that maybe the Prime Minister can eventually get an audience with the President of the US. But nonetheless, the Coalition does welcome this announcement today.
Would you be after even further defence spending, and where could the government get that money from?
Well, we've always been very clear that we believe that defence spending should be somewhere in excess of 3%. And, you know, clearly the first job of every government is to protect the citizens of its nation. And so obviously safety and security is of absolute paramount importance. But, you know, one of the things that we would always be saying is that, you know, you have to have a responsible, concerted and coordinated economic approach to how you manage the budgets of Australia. That's a matter for the government. But certainly defence spending, particularly in the climate that we find ourselves at the moment internationally, is really important, so that we make sure that we do have the capability to defend our nation and to make sure that we play our part in the global efforts for peace and stability.
All right, you heard Richard Marles there say that the recognition of Palestine doesn't matter that much in the relationship. What was your view of that?
Well, I think the Coalition's been pretty clear all the way along the view that we've taken to the approach that the Albanese Labor government has taken to Palestinian recognition. I mean, obviously, we have always been supporters of a two-state solution, but there are a number of things that need to be in place before that recognition can take place, not the least of which we can't have a terrorist organisation that's in control of a land that this government seems to think it's okay to recognise as a nation. So, you know, whilst we absolutely support the ultimate outcome of a two-state solution, we do not support the approach that the Albanese Labor government's taken to this.
All right, Richard Marles not able to resist there, that saying, you know, we're making a big defence industry announcement. You don't even have a defence industry spokesperson. It's been a messy week, hasn't it?
Well, like, I think one of the things that this last week has said to us is that we do need to focus on the two jobs the Australian people elected us to do. One is to hold the government to account, and I was really pleased in the last week of Parliament in my area of aged care that we were able to do so. And secondly, we need to continue to work on our policy platform, because we do owe the Australian public that we are a strong alternative government going into the next election. And I think this last week just says to us that we need to focus on those really important issues to make sure that we are doing the job that we were elected to do.
You're close to Sussan Ley. How would you describe her mood in terms of Senator Jacinta Price at the moment?
Well, I think the one thing that, you know, our system of government and any Prime Minister or leader of any opposition in this country would always expect that you need the full confidence of your team, your front bench team. And I think Sussan's response to Jacinta not being prepared to offer that confidence to Sussan was absolutely appropriate. She acted swiftly and decisively, and I think that the message that she's sending to Australians is that she's a strong leader, and it's time to get on with the jobs that we're elected to do. Will
it cost her, though? Will it cost you? I mean, you had Peter Clennell. She's obviously an influential figure with the Liberal base. She's on Sky News, as you know, of an evening. She wrote this morning in the Sunday papers, quote, "By sacking her, the current Liberal leadership risks the impression that the only women and Aboriginal people it cares for are those whose views don't differ much from Labor people." What do you think of those comments?
Well, look, I clearly don't support those comments at all. I absolutely believe that the leader has the absolute right that every member of her front bench team supports her leadership and her leadership team. Sussan was left in an untenable position last week when Jacinta refused to provide that confidence in the leader. And I think Sussan did the only action that was open to her, and that was to ask Jacinta to go to the back bench. Now, that's not to say that, you know, Jacinta can't make a significant contribution to Conservative politics from the backbench. I'm sure she absolutely will. She has for her entire life has been somebody who stood up for Conservative views. But, to suggest that Sussan had any other course of action this week, but to do what she did, I think, and from someone like Peter Credlin, who I'm sure she would have expected when she was Tony Abbott's Chief of Staff, that anybody that showed disloyalty or wouldn't support him as leader, she would have expected the same thing.
Can you see a place for Jacinta Price back on the front bench?
Look, I think our whole team, about our team being a bit smaller than it used to be, I think our whole team has got incredible depth and opportunity for them to make a contribution, whether it be on the backbench through leadership or through an executive position on the front bench. And I'm sure that Jacinta has got a huge amount to offer our party. She's offered and provided a lot, and she's been a magnificent contributor to our party. And I'm sure she will be into the future. So I really look forward to the contribution she'll continue to make.
So just to be clear on that, could you see a situation in a year or two where she comes back to the front bench?
I think every single member of our backbench has got the opportunity to move to the front bench. There's an incredible depth of talent, and that includes Jacinta.
What did you make of Jane Hume jumping on the Leader and Laura J's show during the week over her handling of the issue?
Look, obviously everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I have my opinion, and I've been very loud about what I believe was an appropriate course of action and an appropriate handling of this particular issue by the leader. I'm not going to speculate what other people may or may not think, but all I can say absolutely categorically is I support the leader's decision, and I think she handled it appropriately.
Do you think Alex Hawke did anything wrong in terms of contacting Jacinta Price or her staffer last week?
Well, obviously we contact each other as members of the parliament at all times, and to seek advice, to maybe make suggestions, and so that we can work collaboratively. Clearly, there were only two people on the conversation that occurred between these two particular members of our parliament, and I'm not going to speculate as to what happened or what didn't happen. But I mean, one of the most important things that we can do going forward as we develop our platform to go to the next election is a collaboration between our colleagues. But of course, that needs to be respectful, and I would hope that that's the way all of these conversations were handled.
Should Sussan Ley have called Jacinta earlier?
Well, I mean, I understand that Sussan did speak to Jacinta. I know that she'd given her time to clarify the comments that have been caused the concern to the Indian community. But I think quite clearly the big challenge here was in relation to Jacinta's refusal to give confidence to the leader. But I mean, I know Sussan did ring and speak to Jacinta, as many of us did, spoke to Jacinta over the last week. But we are where we are now, Andrew, and I think it's time to move on and focus on those things that are important to Australians.
You spoke to her? Did you call on her to apologise?
I know. I'm not going to divulge the subject of my conversation, but I rang Jacinta just to make sure that a colleague was okay, and I'm sure a lot of my colleagues did the same thing.
Did you call her subsequent to her being turfed from the front bench or beforehand?
I spoke to Jacinta before her decision to go to that press conference and last week in Perth, yes.
The Kiama by-election result last night, is that another indication of how hard things are for the Liberal Party at the moment?
Well, I mean, obviously, Andrew, the election result last night was a disappointing one for the coalition, but the people of Kiama have spoken, and absolutely I respect the decision of those people. But yes, it was a disappointing result.
Just finally, Chris Minns, the New South Wales Premier, he said that tobacco excise should be cut, that having the rate at the level it is now is fuelling organised crime. What's your view on this?
Well, there is absolutely no doubt we have an enforcement issue when it comes to tobacco and other nicotine products. We are forcing Australians into the hands of organised crime for a whole heap of reasons from failed policy. But the biggest failure of the federal government, I think, is their failure to understand the need for serious enforcement. I mean, we have got an incredibly established organised crime scene here. They're profiting hugely from illicit tobacco and other nicotine products. And we've got a government that thinks it's okay that they're going to send the TGA in to try and enforce the rules of the government when it comes to this organised crime. I mean, this government, if they're serious about stamping out illegal nicotine sales, they need to be serious about enforcement, and quite clearly they're not. As we sit here today, it took them months, if not over a year, to put the illicit tobacco and vaping commissioner in place. They need to be serious about this. Stop making announcements and actually do something. This is a very serious issue.
Anne Ruston, thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Andrew.